like the logic would be that if life was easier, you'd be happier. But I don't necessarily think that's true. I think there's something about life being too easy that it fucks people's heads up because they need a certain amount of struggle in order to have a meaning for their existence. I think that's how we're hardwired because of hundreds of thousands of years of hard scrabble living to try to get by. And then within the last, X amount of years, it's been pretty fucking easy to coast. There's more fat people now than there ever been. This is the first time in history where poor people are fat. It's, back in the day, fat people were super attractive. They would paint these Rubenesque models because it was so rare that a woman was so opulent that she had the ability to get overweight.
Well, there's also a different definition today of what quote unquote, what being fat is, right? Like, I think that back in the day, there were fewer people that were really morbidly obese, which is, like I went to the doctor a few years ago. Doctor said, you're morbidly obese. And if we look at what that means from a medical, forgetting all the other...
He said that to you?
He said that to me.
That doesn't make any sense.
I was 210 pounds, and I'm 5'8", and that gets me there.
Yeah, but you can't... They do that shit with BMI. That's nonsense.
All I know is he said it's unhealthy. You're not obese, are you?
I'm technically obese. If you look at the body mass index, I'm technically obese.
So maybe the doc, from a medical perspective, they're saying, look, is this a healthy weight that you're weighing? And then,
It's not, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way because you're just doing it on an average of body height. People are built differently. They're just built differently. Their bones are different width. They have different size hands, different width shoulders. They're thicker. Some, like Samoans, for instance. There's some guys that are heavyweight kickboxers. Like, for example, there's a guy named Mark Hunt. Mark Hunt is about 5'10", and he was one of the greatest kickboxers of all time. And he's a heavyweight. At 5'10", he was like 260 pounds. He's a thick, big fucking beast. Dude. He's not morbidly obese. He's just built different. Some guys are built tiny and frail. You can't compare a guy who's 5'10", who's tiny and frail with tiny bones to a guy like Mark Hunt or a lot of Italians that are big, thick people at shorter statures. It's just, you can't do that. That body mass index, it really should be about body fat. Like how much body fat, what percentage body fat do you have? Now, if I'm measured by body fat, I'm not obese at all. I'm not even close. But if you look at just the BMI, I'm technically obese.
So this is like a big, people are like, hey, you're going on Joe Rogan. This guy's, got millions, it's like the most listened to, whatever. So many people are going to hear this. Like, what's the one thing that you would want the world, if you could change something based on this, like, what would you want? I would say, well, we should really do a little bit better of educating people how to take care of their bodies. How to eat. Like, you go to school, and every period is an educational period, and then recess is when you eat. And they don't teach us anything about the importance of what we put in our bodies, how we eat, how it's going to affect us. And it's maybe, the most important decision we're going to make for our long-term health period. And I wish we would put a little bit more energy into that, because what you're talking about right here is like, man, if people really understood what type of body they had and how to take care of themselves, we would be in way better shape, man. We'd would just be in a better shape. We all feel better about ourselves when we are healthy and able to perform, right, physically.
For sure. I think, in a perfect world, it would be a normal part of everyone's day to exercise instead of this thing that people dread and people procrastinate about and most people put off. If you look at the percentage of people in America that are like legitimately obese, not by the body mass index, but by percentage of body fat, it's unusually high. And
although it's getting better, isn't it getting better? I feel as though visually from what if you were to look at 10 years ago, it was the first generation of children who had a shorter life expectancy than their parents because, congenital heart disease was just such a massive killer. And it felt at that time, just from observation, that that folks certainly in the last 10 years, health and health-related exercise has been way more popular. Like the gyms are constantly all over the place. Whether or not people are following through, it's definitely there has been a rebound. You don't feel that way?
I think there has been a popularization of exercise, but in terms of the amount of people that are fit, I don't think there's been that much of a change, unfortunately. And during the pandemic, I think it's actually dropped off. You know, one of the things that we were talking about recently was children during the pandemic. There's been a big upswing in obesity amongst children, unfortunately, and big upswing in the amount of fat gained and weight gained for kids because, you know, for 2 years, they
can't go outside.
Yeah,
can't do anything.
Unfortunately, you know, the hope is that turns around now, and that we're kind of we see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we're getting out of this thing. But it would have been it's an amazing opportunity during the pandemic for people to take care of their health and realize that that's like one of the primary factors of whether or not you have a good outcome versus a bad outcome from COVID. It's a huge, I mean, there's many factors, right? But that's a primary factor. Obesity is one of the biggest comorbidities.
Nobody has ever once argued that there's something negative about being in good shape. Like there's just,
exactly.
You know, I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on. If you're in better shape, you know, it's better, period.
Yeah.
And there's no amount of exercise. Like there are people, like my friend, I was talking about my partner at the meatball shop, this guy Mike Chernow. The guy is health obsessed. And it's like, great. You're health obsessed. What, you know, like, no one's shaming you for that, man. Like, every time I want to get a whiskey, he's out in the gym. Like, good for him. Like, that's a good thing, being health obsessed. You can be obsessed about a lot of things. Why not be obsessed about your health, you know?